Good day, everyone, and welcome to HKO Games. Today is an exciting day for us as we do a rundown of our game, UNGA BUNGA. UNGA BUNGA has been a wonderful addition to our roster. It's very simple to play, and it's good for kids of all ages, and even adults will enjoy it. Now, the first thing we'll want to do when we open up our box is separate our rules, our item cards, and our playable cards. The rules are very self-explanatory. They are one sheet of paper, and we will go through them in our tutorial. The item cards are indicated by the item card back. And on the face of the item cards, they will show you each of the 6 items that you need to make. There's 36 item cards in the deck, 6 for each player, and up to 6 players. The playable cards are indicated by the caveman on the back, and each of the playable cards will have a different face card depending on what they do. We'll begin by going through each of the item cards. When a game's played, the item cards are laid out in front of each player face up, and these are to indicate how to make each item and which items have already been made. We'll go through each of these one by one just to give a quick breakdown of how they work. Now, they can be laid out in any order, although it's good to keep the tool on either end because the tool has to be made first. The tool is a good spot to start, and we'll look at what makes a tool. To make a tool, you'll take a holdy stick and a smashy rock. You'll notice that they're both green and they match the green tool. The smashy rock picture matches the smashy rock here, and the holdy stick picture matches the holdy stick here. So when a tool is made, a holdy stick and a smashy rock will go together to make a tool. Next, we'll move on to the fire. The fire is another very simple one. There's only 2 cards that can make fire, and they're both orange. So all 3 are orange. The sparky rocks and the skinny sticks. Combined, these will make fire. We'll move on to something a little more challenging, the house. The house requires a rolly stick and a choppy stick. Now, you'll notice that the choppy stick and the rolly stick definitely make the house, but the rolly stick also makes the wheel, and the choppy stick also makes clothes. And that's why there's 2 different colors on each card. And we'll look at that when we go to make our wheel. The wheel also uses a rolly stick, and it'll use a rolly rock. So we'll see that the blue and the blue make a wheel, so that'll make our wheel. The yellow and the yellow will make our house, and that's how we make our house. The bunga wife is slightly more difficult. In order to make a bunga wife, you will first need your aruga card, and you will have to pair that with either a clubby stick, some stringy shells, or a shiny rock. We'll see here that the aruga card has the stone heart, and will pair with any of these 3. So, an aruga card with the shiny rock will make a bunga wife. The aruga card with some stringy shells will make the bunga wife, and an aruga card with the clubby stick will make a bunga wife. But we cannot pair any of these 3 together to make our bunga wife. They have to be paired with an aruga card. Clothes are definitely the most difficult part about this game. Not only because of the different combinations required to make clothes, but also because the wild animals can be sent after another player to possibly get a chance to look at their cards and steal one. With the clothes, we will see that there's 3 different categories of animal and 3 different categories of weapon. The bitey cat we'll find on top, and all 3 weapons will stop the bitey cat. With the growly beast, we'll find him in the middle, and the choppy stick and the pointy stick will stop the growly beast. With the stompy monster, we'll find him at the bottom, and only the pointy stick will stomp a stompy monster. When making clothes, you'll only require 1 wild animal with 1 weapon. So, for something like the bitey cat, all 3 weapons will work, which means that you can combine the bitey cat with a clubby stick, or with a choppy stick, or with a pointy stick. And all 3 of those combinations will make clothes. The growly beast, of course, will only pair with the choppy stick or the pointy stick. You will not be able to stop a growly beast with a clubby stick. And of course, with the stompy monster, the only thing that can stop a stompy monster is a pointy stick. We'll move into sending wild animals after another player later on in the video. Before we finish up our discussion on the item cards, we have to mention the UNGA BUNGA wild card. The UNGA BUNGA wild card can be used in lieu of any other card. So let's say you wanted to make fire and you had this. You could use a Sparky Rock and an UNGA BUNGA card to make fire. You could also use Skinny Sticks and an UNGA BUNGA card to make fire. You could also just use 2 UNGA BUNGA wild cards. They'll work for anything. They'll even work as a wild animal, so a stompy monster, to pair with a pointy stick, or they'll work as a pointy stick to pair with a monster. The UNGA BUNGA wild card can be used for anything, and that also includes sending it to another player the same as you would send a wild animal after another player. So just keep that in mind. Now when setting up a game, you'll give each player 1 of each of the 6 item cards, and they'll place them in front of themselves face up so that they can see what they need to make and how to make it. The remaining item cards can be put back in the deck. There's enough item cards for 6 players, and this is a 3-player game. Before we begin our game demonstration, let's quickly go over how to give another player a wild animal. Now, for this example, if player 1 wanted to give player 2 a growly beast, if player 2 could not beat that growly beast, which would require a choppy stick, a pointy stick, or an UNGA BUNGA wild card, then player 2 would have to show player 1 their hand, and player 1 would pick any card of their choice and put it in their hand. And the growly beast would go into the discard pile. If player 2 beat the growly beast and has not made a tool yet, then these cards would also go into the discard pile. However, if player 2 has already made a tool, then these cards will go as clothes. On a different note, in this example with player 3, if player 3 has already made all 5 things and clothes are their last item to make, and player 1 threw a wild animal at them, if they were to beat that wild animal, they would not be allowed to use it as clothes. In order to make clothes as your last item, you would have to make them yourself, out of your hand. Before we begin our game demonstration, we'll go over declaring UNGA BUNGA. In this example, player 3 has got the 5 out of 6 items. And at the end of their turn, they have the 2 cards that they need to make their final item. So, they will declare UNGA BUNGA. And that will indicate to the other players that they are about to go out. Now, the other players can continue to make their own items, but are highly recommended to throw a wild animal after player 3 in an attempt to stop them from making their final item. If both players make their plays and player 3 still has the 2 cards they need to make their final item, then they can go out and win the game. If they don't, then their declaration of Unga Bunga is invalid, and they have to wait at least 1 turn before they can declare Unga Bunga again. We'll begin our game demonstration now. In this demonstration, player 1 is the oldest, and they will go first. Player 2 will go second, regardless of how old they are, and the same with player 3. When the first game is finished, player 2 will start the next game. When that game is finished, player 3 will start the game after that, and so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to dealing and shuffling, you might want the player behind the first player to shuffle and deal. But with younger kids, you might want just to have an adult do all the shuffling and dealing. You'll shuffle the deck and you'll deal out 5 cards. So each player will get 5 cards. Now, when you get your cards, you'll hold them in your hand and not show the other players. But for this example, because we want everyone to see, we'll lay the cards out. So the same goes with player 2. And the same with player 3. To begin this game, player 1 has to make a tool, which they can do with their Smashy Rock and their Unga Bunga card. So they'll combine their Smashy Rock, their Unga Bunga card, and make a tool. Now that their tool's been made, they can make any of the other items, which they will use their Aruga card with another Unga Bunga card to make their Bunga Wife. With their last card, because it's a Stompy monster, they can give it to either player, which they'll likely do, and give it to player 3. Player 3 must use their Unga Bunga card to stop the Stompy monster. Because they haven't made a tool yet, they can't use it to make clothes, so it'll just go into the discard pile. Player 3 will pick up a card to replace the one that they lost, and player 1 will pick up 5 new cards. And that's the end of player 1's turn. Player 2, they can use their Holdy Stick and their Smashy Rock to also make a tool. They won't be able to make anything else with the remaining cards, so they'll just pick up 2 new cards. Player 3 cannot make a tool. They could give somebody a Stompy monster, but now that another player and both players have made their tools, player 3 has the option to drop 4 or 5 cards, which they will do by dropping all 5 of their cards and taking 5 new ones, because it's imperative that they make their tool. Player 1 now can combine their rolly rock with their rolly stick and make their wheel. And with the remaining cards, they can't make anything else. So they'll just pick up 2 new cards. Player 2 cannot combine anything. Because they've already made a tool, they can no longer drop 4 or 5 cards. They can only drop 1. So they will discard 1 card and take 1 new card. Player 3 can now combine their Smashy Rock with their Unga Bunga card and make their tool. Now that they've made their tool, they can make anything else, which they will by combining a choppy stick and a rolly stick and making their house. And with their last card, they will give a Bitey Cat to player 1 as revenge for giving them that other Stompy monster. Player 1 now can use either the pointy stick or the Unga Bunga card to stop this Bitey Cat. They'll use their pointy stick so they can keep their Unga Bunga card. But now that they've made a tool, they can also turn that Bitey Cat into clothes. So, player 1 will pick up a card to replace the one they used, and player 3 will take 5 new cards. Now it's player 1's turn, and player 1 can combine their Sparky Rocks with their Unga Bunga card and make their fire. Now they've made 5 out of the 6 items. They will also give player 2 a Growly Beast. Player 2 will stop the Growly Beast with their choppy stick. Remember that they cannot use the clubby stick because the clubby stick does not work on the Growly Beast. They could have used their pointy stick, but it's better to keep that. But they have made a tool, so now they can make clothes. Player 1 is going to pick up the 3 cards that they used to maintain 5. And player 2 is going to pick up 1 card for the one that they used. This is the end of player 1's turn, and they've made 5 items. Now they are allowed a few seconds to decide if they're going to declare Unga Bunga. They have a rolly stick, but not a choppy stick. So they can't declare Unga Bunga yet. So player 2 is going to go, and player 2 cannot make anything right now. So they'll just get rid of their holdy stick and take a new card. Player 3 can combine their Bitey Cat with their clubby stick and make clothes. And they'll take 2 new cards to replace their missing cards. Player 1 can't do anything, so they'll just throw away one of their Aruga cards and pick up a new card. They still have to look and see if they could declare Unga Bunga, which they can't. So that's the end of their turn. Player 2 still can't make anything, so they will get rid of their Shiny Rock and take a new card. Player 3 can combine their rolly stick with their choppy stick and make another house, but they still need to keep their rolly stick to make their wheel, and they've already made their house, so they probably won't do that. So instead, they will just give player 2 a bitey cat. Player 2 will stop the bitey cat with their clubby stick. They already have clothes, so they'll just put that in the discard pile. Player 2 will take a new card, and player 3 will take a new card. Player 1 still needs to make their house, so they'll give player 2 a growly beast. Player 2 again will stop that growly beast with their choppy stick. And because they've already got clothes, it'll just go in the discard pile. Player 2 will take a new card to replace the missing one, and player 1 will take a new card. Player 1 still can't declare Unga Bunga yet, so it'll be player 2's turn. Player 2 still can't make anything, so they'll just get rid of their holy stick and pick up a new card. Player 3 is still, they could make their house, but they want to keep the rolly stick, so they'll just get rid of their smashy rock and take a new card. Back to player 1. Player 1 still can't make their house, so they'll throw away an Aruga card and take a new card. At the end of their turn, they still can't make their house, so they won't declare Unga Bunga. Player 2, again, still can't make anything, but player 2 will throw a bitey cat at player 1. Player 1 has nothing that can attack a bitey cat. So, player 1 is going to show player 2 their cards. And player 2 is going to look at their cards and say, hey, you need a rolly stick, and I need a rolly stick, so I'm going to take your rolly stick. So, the bitey cat goes back in the discard pile. Player 2 has all 5 of their cards because they took this one, and player 1 will replace the one that was taken. It's player 3's turn. Player 3 can now combine the clubby stick with the Aruga card and get a Bunga wife. And they'll just pick up 2 new cards. On to player 1 again. Player 1 is upset about player 2 taking their card, so they're going to give player 2 a Stompy Monster. So, player 2 will fight that Stompy Monster with their pointy stick. Already have clothes, so into the discard pile. Player 1 will take a new card, and player 2 will take a new card. This is the end of player 1's turn. They still have 5 items, but they still can't declare Unga Bunga yet. On to player 2. Player 2 now has a choppy stick and a rolly stick, so they can make their house. And they'll take 2 new cards. And on to player 3 here. Player 3 still wants to hang on to this. He doesn't want to make another house yet. So he will likely throw away a holy stick and take a new card. Back to player 1. Player 1 is going to throw a Stompy Monster at player 3. Player 3 doesn't have a pointy stick and doesn't have an Unga Bunga card. So they will show player 1 their cards, and player 1's going to look at their cards and take their rolly stick. The Stompy Monster wasn't beaten, so it goes into the discard pile. Player 3 takes a card to replace the one they had. And player 1, it's the end of their turn. They still can't make their house, so they still can't declare Unga Bunga. Back over to player 2. Player 2 now can combine their Unga Bunga card with their skinny sticks and make fire. They'll take 2 new cards. And now they could declare Unga Bunga because they have what they need to make their Bunga wife, and they have what they need to make their wheel. So player 2 is going to declare Unga Bunga, and they're going to shout, Unga Bunga! Now, that indicated that player 2 is going to go out. So player 3 here, they're going to make their fire, and they're going to give player 2 a growly beast. Player 2 is going to stop the growly beast with a Unga Bunga card. They already have clothes, so it'll just go in the discard pile. Player 2 is going to take a new card, and player 3 is going to take 3 new cards. And player 3 has made 5 out of the 6 things, so they get a few seconds to look at their cards and decide what they're going to do. Well, they still need that Rolly Rock, so they can't declare Unga Bunga yet. Back over to player 1. Player 1 can combine an Aruga card with a Shiny Rock, and they can get their second Bunga wife. But they won't put them down here, they'll put them in here. And they will also give a Bitey Cat over to player 2. Player 2 will stop the Bitey Cat with the clubby stick. And they'll put that up. Player 2 is going to take a new card. And player 1 is going to take 3 new cards. So now, player 1 has the Rolly stick with the Unga Bunga card. So they're going to declare Unga Bunga. So they'll yell, Unga Bunga! All right. And on to player 2. Player 2, they can get their Bunga wife, but they cannot make their wheel. So their declaration of Unga Bunga is now invalid until their next turn. That's the next time they can declare it. So they'll take 2 new cards. And on to player 3. Player 3 is going to, they have enough to make 2 houses, so they've got a leftover Rolly stick. So they'll probably make a house, a second house, put the cards in the discard pile, and give player 1 a Bitey Cat. Player 1 has to fight the Bitey Cat with their Unga Bunga card. So player 1 will take a new card to replace that one. And player 3 here will take 3 new cards. They're going to look at their cards and they can't make their wheel yet. So they cannot declare Unga Bunga. But player 1 has declared Unga Bunga, and they picked up the Unga Bunga card that they needed to make their house. So they'll make their 6th item, and player 1 wins the game. There's only one winner, and you don't carry on for a 2nd place or a 3rd place. Once the first person makes all 6 items, they become the ultimate caveman and win the game. Now, once your first game is over, you're going to clean up the cards, but make sure to leave all of the item cards separate from the rest. Now, it's good to mention that with the discard pile, because no one can take anything from the discard pile, If it starts to get big and sloppy, it's a good idea to take part of it and set it aside so that it doesn't get knocked over, especially with the younger kids playing the game. After your first game is over, now you can shuffle the deck and player 2 can start the next game. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and thank you all for watching.